This is how to properly adjust your SAG for front and rear suspension using a BMW S1000RR as an example. As shown in the other videos, I've already swapped out the stock front and rear suspension with a set of Ohlins. I've left the compression and rebound as it was from Kyle Racing, but what I'm going to do today, per his direction, is to properly set the SAG for both of them. Now sometimes in a manual, all it'll tell you to do is check the bike with it resting by itself and the difference between that height and with yourself on the bike. What I'm going to do today is suspend the bike, get the fully extended value and measure that difference from when I'm on it and have it compressed. So it's going to be a bigger number, but it's what they recommend to get a more accurate calculation. For this work, you're either going to need a front stand like this or a way to suspend the bike, because you have to pick the bike up and have it so the front wheel is off the ground. I'm going to use one of these stands, but before that pin can get inserted, I need to remove this piece and that brake point. That bottom panel and the piece for the brake tee are off. If you're worried about scratching it, obviously you can take your fender off or whatever you want to. I know I can get in there easy enough, so I'm not too worried about it. But what you're trying to do now is you got to get that pin into the stem back here so you can raise the front end. I already have the rear end on a stand so that the bike is centered. You want to do that before trying to put this front stand in. Now you can see the tire is clear and we can get a full length measurement of the extended distance on that fork. I've got this gadget over here that tells me where it is, and it is 4.74. I'm going to pull that front end stand out because I should be done with this. Now with the front end resting back on the ground and being supported in the rear yet, you want to measure this distance now, and it's going to be less than when it was fully extended. And the difference between fully extended and what it is now, that's going to be your static SAG amount. You're going to want to write that down too. Now I'm all suited up. I'm going to get on so I can press it down as low as it can go. In the book it says that one turn of the adjustment screw will cause 1 millimeter change in spring load. One turn of the screw will cause 1 millimeter change. So since I'm at 42.29 and I was recommended to set it at 40 by Kyle Racing, I'm going to set it 2 millimeters increased spring load, and I have to do those on both sides, of course. And you can see what I did here is I put a plus sign on the tape right where the plus sign there is, and I did the same thing over here so that I know where my spot is. Now I just need to move those inward 2 full turns each to get my 2 millimeters of additional spring load. I'm going to do 1 turn. Again, we're going inward. There's 1. There's exactly 2 turns on that one. 2 full turns, 2 full turns. Now that I'm getting 1.5 on each side, that converts to 38 millimeters. So I guess it went double. So 1 complete turn is actually not a millimeter of SAG like I thought it was. So I need to go backwards 1 turn, and that should get me right at 40. Backed both of them off 1 complete turn, so they're basically 1 turn inward from where they were originally. Final position on the preload ended up being 1 turn further in than it was when I got them originally. So after all that iteration, final is 1 turn in. I ended up at 40.39 millimeters. So it's just over 40, but the manual says 41, so that should be perfect for the front. Now I can put these parts back in place. Brake tee and that panel are both installed again, so the whole front end is back solid, and now we'll move on to the rear. Now we're going to do the same thing with the back. We've already got it raised on the rear stand. I've got some jack stands that I put under each peg. Make sure the pegs don't fold up or anything. You can see those are rigid. So I'm going to just slowly back that jack out and drop the pegs into the jack stands. Okay, and it's going free because we don't see it stopping on against the ground. Now we have to measure the fully extended position. We've got my gadget that I'm going to use here. There's not a fork to measure like we did on the front, so I kind of have to use something like this. So I've got it backed off. I'm going to just stick it in there, start tightening it. It feels fairly snug. Now, all right, it's 25 inches exactly, and we should have room for clearance. All right, as it came, it's at 27 millimeters for ride height. The book says 28. Kyle Racing told me 30, so we'll kind of aim for that 29 mark. Now for this component of the suspension, this is the guy that actually adjusts your spring preload, similar to the way that the front forks did. So I need to turn it in to go up in spring tension, but since I'm already just a little bit too tight, I need to actually loosen it. So I'm going to try loosening at one turn. I've marked the stem as well as the outer piece. I'm going to go one turn and see what that does. I couldn't actually even go a full turn. I got about maybe a third. Okay, after backing it off as much as it would go, which was only quarter to third turn, whatever it was, it's just in the 27 to 28 millimeters. 28 is what the Ohlins book says. Kyle's group said 30, so it's in there, but just every little bit you mess with geometry on these things. Effectively, what I guess that means is that it's not compressing more in the back, so it's going to have a little bit less rake than it could if I could loosen it up a little bit. Since I adjusted the rear, backing off all the preload on the spring, and I was only at 27 millimeters, which is just a hair under that kind of 28, 930 range. I went back to the front and I adjusted it down to 39, just over 39 millimeters. And it says, 38 to 40, maybe even 41. So this way it keeps the bike pretty close to level, and it does allow for if I do gain a little bit of weight, but it's keeping everything right where it needs to be, and it should perform really well this way without messing up any of the geometry. Now that the SAG rear and front is set right where I want it per the instructions and recommendations, the next thing I wanted to do is just do a gut check on where I was as far as the geometry goes. So I put a straight member across the two tires, shimmed it up to make sure it was level, and then just made a plumb bob. You can see the string and the bolt hanging there. The rake measured just under 24 degrees, and I think it was like 23.5 or 23.9 is the spec on it. So that means my geometry should be really good with the SAG really good now. And so I'll go ride it, and right now it seems to be real easy to turn in, much more than what the Aprilia is. And so I'm just got to figure out if it's too easy to turn in. And if it is, then I can adjust the rear position height, because the tubes are the stock position in the trees, so I don't want to mess with them. If I need to, I will adjust the height of the rear shock, not the spring and SAG, that's good. Then what that means is I need to add just a little bit more rake. And if I do that, that would be squashing the back end, right? So you bring down the back, pushes your rake out, and makes it just a little less easy to turn. So that's what I would do if I decide that I don't like how it handles right now. It'd just be taking this bolt out, loosening the blue jam nut, turning the link in to bring the rear down a little bit, which would give you more rake and lessen the sensitivity of the steering a little bit. Then retighten the jam nut and put the bolt back in. Now the suspension in the front and the rear are properly checked for full SAG. Everything's adjusted with where they sent it. Should be good. I'll take it out in the morning and give it another ride, but didn't make any major changes, so fully expect if anything it'll be an improvement. I'll leave the indicator on and I'll just watch that like you would a zip tie and see how far it goes, but with a little bit more preload up front, it should keep it from getting anywhere near bottomed out this time. After some riding in the hill country, you can see that the compression indicator is still a decent amount above bottoming out, which is what you want, but it's using a lot of the travel, so it's where we want it to be. The bike now flicks really easily into turns, but not to the point of being unstable. I'm using good travel on my suspension. It feels good, even going around the chattery curves in the hill country. Everything is behaving really well for this, so I'm very happy with how the suspension is set up. The bike handles and rides awesome, just like this motorcycle should. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to learn more about how to enjoy amazing machines like this.